Now, the term for the sacred is unexplained by some historians, but Plutarch claims it was due to the exchange of sacred vows between the lover and the beloved at the shrine of Aeolus, who was a lover of Heracles himself at Thebes. And he also mentions Plato's characterization of the lover as a friend inspired of God. Now, regardless of what we might call this unit, right, with today's views, I'm sorry, because back then it was completely fine. These were probably, as a fighting unit, the most battle hardened, battle worthy unit on the field. And this is even if you consider Philip and his royal guard, the royal squadrons of the companion cavalry, these 300 pound for pound were the most capable fighting force that we will see. They are not to be underestimated at any cost. It was the sacred band that led the breaking of the Spartans of Lectua. So they're the guys that broke the Spartan super soldier mirage, as my friend likes to call them. So overall, as we could say that the Greek coalition numbers about 36,000 men. Unknown number of cavalry, but it's estimated probably very minuscule amounts. The Greeks were predominantly going to be a foot force. Now, with regards to the Macedonian army, they were about 32,000 men, 30,000 of them being infantry. The right flank was commanded by Philip of Macedon himself, and he had about 1,000 missile troops and 67,000 soldiers, which were a mix of the Hypaspists, who were the hoplite armed infantry, and a few battalions of the Pezzatira, the foot companions, to form small groups of phalanx squads. And now these men were ultimately the best Macedonian troops available. The center consisted the two major blocks of the foot companions and the Macedonian phalanx arranged in. Now they were arranged 15 to 20 ranks deep, which is two times as deep as a traditional Greek formation of about 8 to 12. And armed with the sarissa, that's game over if you ask me. Especially since you have cavalry and to protect you, and also there's less chances of outflanking. The left flank and the center is also the total strength is about 15,000 men. And knowing how traditionally the Macedonians did array themselves, there would have been like you could say 10 blocks of men, about 1,500 each. These were like kind of like the battalionish equivalents of their army. The left flank was commanded by then 17-year-old Prince Alexander III. His force had about 5,000 6,000 men, similar infantry composition as his father, but not the pick of the cream of the infantry, but still very capable men. And about 22, and most of the cavalry of the Macedonians, which included, uh, at this battle, it was said about 1,700 companion cavalry and about 5,600 Thessalian cavalry. He also had a screen of 1,000 missile troops as well. Greg, do you want to talk a little bit of Alexander? I know we can't go too overboard because his exploits are still yet to come.
I mean, what's there to say about this lesser known individual, just a 17-year-old boy of insignificance to anything really, right?
Yeah,
Here, I'm just going to
it's.
put a picture up and yeah, for the audience, I
I
was
do actually
just
have some pictures I can show.
oh, here, well, yeah, you
So
could
this
throw
is we
throw up a few
have one of
pictures.
his that is famous one.
Yeah, I'm just
But
putting up
I
an
think
artistic rendition of what he might have looked like, which
I think
is
I
up to
have.
scrutiny.
Can you see this picture? Because it's famous incident with Bucephalus.
Here, one. Let me stop sharing. Here, put it up. Yeah.
But see,
Is that an AI made picture? I would just,
I believe so. Yeah,
yeah, definitely. I'm looking at
it
the horse. I would imagine, yeah.
definitely is. But it does because it was at his young age where he was still
Yeah.
being tutored. Alexander has a famous incident with Bucephalus, which at that time his father was present because keep in mind Philip was not really an active father because he was
Mm.
camping away
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. To say the
He
least.
usually would, but it is at this, I think he was home and Philip did see a lot of men get their ass kicked by Bucephalus. And when Alexander does ask permission of his father to go and you know tame the horse, Philip was actually pretty nervous about this because, and quite a lot of the courtiers as well. You don't want the young prince to get kicked by the horse and possibly die.
Definitely. Yeah.
But as we know, Alexander was able to tame Bucephalus by moving him away from his shadow and was able to successfully mount him. That it is said Philip, was streaming tears of joy at the son's accomplishment.
Mhm.
Now, in his early years, though, I think one thing I gotta say first is the day Alexander was born, or rather, not the day he was born, because we know that there's the famous story that the day he was apparently conceived, uh, you know, lightning hit the room where Philip and Olympias were having intercourse, and that is like, they say is the divine intervention of Zeus coming in, kind of fueling, Alexander's later future godhood megalomania.
Well, Olympias said that Zeus was the father and not Philip II, basically. That was her position and all of that. But yeah,
True enough, but let's just leave it that Olympia was a very tough and brutal and savage woman.
she was a witch. She was a witch.
Yeah. I mean, apparently it says that the honeymoon of Philip and Olympias, I think when he comes to the bedroom, he sees snakes.
Yeah.
But so it is said that when the news comes, right? So Philip had just completed the siege of Portadea on the peninsula of Chalcis. So he gets three horsemen coming to his command tent, right, with messages. So first he gets the news Parmenion has defeated a large enemy army of the Illyrian and Pannonians. The second arms news says, his son Alexander is born. As the horses that he entered into the Olympic Games sponsored by him won the races. So guess who? And he's also just celebrating a victory, right? He's taken a city. Guess which messenger got him the most joy that day?
The victory of the horse.
Obviously,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, Olympias at this time was also the principal wife, so it's important because he has seven, eight wives. But as a principal wife, this means that he is technically the heir presumptive to the throne.
For now.
Yeah, for now. Now, Alexander would be raised by a nurse, Laniki, who is the sister of a future general, Clytus. And his mom took a pretty active role in his tutoring, which was, um, you know, raised by a man called Leonidas and then by Lysimachus of Acarnania. So he was taught in the same way of any typical Macedonian noble youth, to read, play the lyre, ride, fight, and hunt. And it was at 10 years old where he had this famous incident with Bucephalus. And at the age of 13, Philip began searching for a tutor. And, this will be Aristotle coming.
Hmm.
And, in return for agreeing to tutor Alexander, Philip agreed to rebuild Aristotle's hometown of Stagaria, which Philip had razed, and repopulated by buying and freeing the ex-citizens who were slaves or were given pardons to return from exile. And at that time, Alexander also starts to get exposed to the Persians because there were several nobles from the Persian Achaemenid Empire which were being harbored as fugitives in the court at Pella. And it's also here that he starts forming the bond of his key companions, such as, Ptolemy, Hephaestion, and Cassander. So, and it's at the age of 16, so 3 years after learning with Aristotle, Alexander starts accompanying Philip against in battle. So the first conflicts of Alexander, he's fighting the Thracians at the age of 16. in which left Alexander in charge of as regent as well. And it was said that during his absence, the Thracian tribe of the Mede revolted against Macedonia, and Alexander, raised a quick army, defeated them in battle, supposedly leading the charge himself, because that's what Alexander does. And won the day quite well. And he also would be later dispatched by his father to subdue revolts in southern Thrace. So does show that the father is having quite a good amount of trust as well, and he's proving it. Oh, and also when he defeated that tribe, he founded a city called Alexandropolis.
Yeah, he's gonna find about what, 25 more cities he's gonna name similarly.
Now,
Except for the one that he named after his horse. That one.
no, that also had the Alexandria in its name also.
Still, yeah.
But so this is like the boy who would become the king, and it's just sad that Philip is just remembered as his father, even though this is also his moment.
I will note that the one thing that like the general public understands about Alexander is that he fought from the front, he led.